like 40% of Charlotte homes are selling below asking price, with homes sitting for 70, 80, even 90 days. But the weird thing is, while some homes sit for forever, others are gone before the weekend's even over. So in the same city, same metro area, we're seeing two very different sets of activity, two different games, two different ways that people are behaving. And so the difference isn't the house or even necessarily the zip code, it's something else. And I'm going to show you what I'm seeing as somebody that's been pulling Charlotte submarket data every week for the past 4 years. And I'm going to also show you exactly where there are good deals to buy, where is good to sell if you currently own, and where there's not really any opportunity right now. Plus, I'll also cover one neighborhood that is quietly starting to shift really rapidly, but nobody's talking about, and might have some really big opportunity coming up soon. So, overall, let's talk about inventory. Let's talk about the housing market at a high level. So, actually, I'm going to share a video here. Let's see. Let's see if we can pull maybe a little meat, Kevin. Let's see. This is one of my go-tos for especially like broad market data. Let's see. Where's Fed update? I'll find that here in a second. We'll start with looking at just overall inventory trends because that'll probably be useful. All right, so if we're just looking at overall market data, let me make sure that the audio is actually working before we get into this too much, because that'd be tragic if it wasn't. Share screen, window, to the walls. Share system audio. Okay. This should be working. All right, so also just I always cover this, my quick primer on data. There's two different ways to look at data. This is median sales price for the Charlotte. Actually, now it's going to be for the Charlotte MSA. So this is unfiltered median sales price, 12-month rolling data or the monthly. Now this looks really choppy, right? But it's because real estate is seasonal. So if you go back 5 years, you're going to see, with the exception of COVID, when everything was just bonkers, um, it's been really consistent since beginning of 2022, which when you take into consideration, we were already in a housing shortage through here, and then COVID hit March 2020, right? There's a ton of increase in the monetary supply. You then start to see, meaning we printed a bunch of money, created a bunch of debt out of thin air. You then see asset prices restabilize at this new higher point because people can only buy so much milk and eggs and gas for their car, right? You can only drive so many miles, and so when you increase the amount of, so just like you learn in econ, there's a supply and demand curve for what somebody's willing to pay for something. Um, there's also then the underlying currency, which also has a supply and demand curve. So I'm going to keep this high level. We're not going to get boring, but that's why you see the activity that you would expect to see continues, right? It's just there's a readjustment period to get to this new stable now. Because if you also, let's see, is there a way I can draw on this? I feel like there's got to be some way I could draw on this. Let's see. We're going to collapse the bar, make this bigger. Let's see. Screenshot. Actually, I'm going to see if I can just. How would I do this? I need to get a second monitor, I think, where I can just put all this stuff on so you guys can see. And I don't have to worry about what's going where. Let's see. I'm going to just share this other window. Bear with me. Where's my screenshot? Where is my screenshot? Search results. Okay, I'm gonna just reshare the same thing. Shoot, I forgot to. System audio. I promise this isn't my first day. Okay, I'm gonna just manually draw this, and then what we'll do is we'll come back to it. So we'll do maybe an arrow here. Because that'll be solid. And actually we'll do this just like if you were doing a stock analysis. Let's see, and then you see the first bottom point seasonal on 2022, which would then be right here. Boom. This makes way more sense. This would be really interesting too if we could make this on a log scale, because I think how's this going to work? Why won't it pull up? Should be maybe on the desktop. Let's see. No, it didn't even save it. It should let me paste it into a blank doc. Not how I wanted to do this, but it's fine. Okay, so here we are. This is what I was drawing. So on a log scale, if we were doing like basically chart analysis on this, like it was a stock, what we would probably see is, because this is actually maybe it wouldn't, because it would be increasing. So you can see there's if we go out to a 10-year, there's a converging trend, which means that this could either form a new trend line, or it could be an indication that in the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be some sort of event where we will stabilize at a new point. Let me find this video that I was looking for on the Fed. Let's try this again. Me, Kevin, Fed meeting. And then we want to look recent. Take a look at this, and then this will give us the overall. What we're going to do is use this to look at the overall market dynamics, and use that to then inform our interpretation of the local market, because the local market exists within the larger market. I'm going to speed this up so that we don't take forever on this because this could go on for quite a while. So we'll watch maybe another 2 minutes of this until they talk through the interest rate policy. Okay, so let's see, we'll go to this ladder. Basically, it sounds like they're monitoring, they're not planning to change anything, which is not going to affect rates, mortgage rates, I should say. Let's see, what is actually mortgage prime rate? Because this is really what I'm trying to get at. Let's see. Now, also, I'm going to say when you see this, any of this data, Freddie Mac is the actual governmental organization that uh, may become private. We'll see. But the reason you look at the prime rate is because it gives you kind of an average of where things are. However, the prime rate is not the actual rate. It's not what you pay. It's not what you get approved for. The prime rate is like what is the central core rate that then everything gets adjusted from depending on your essentially your risk profile. Are you more or less risky than this? So than average. So and also how much margin is there in the lender that you are using. So for instance, one of the lenders that works with many of our clients is always below the prime rate, at least for well qualified buyers. So I'm going to say we look at this data in order to understand market trends. We don't look at this data in order to figure out what you're going to pay, because it's not, those are different numbers. It's a question I get. 15 and 30 year back on the downtrend. And the peak was April 2nd, which was really when we were looking at, I think, the peak of the Strait of Hormuz, and all that was going on. That was also when we saw maximum fear in the market as well. Because it was probably right around March 26th was when I made the uh, market update video, which is coming out very shortly. And it is very timely. You might hear that it's 3 weeks behind the times. Everything I said in that video is spot on. I just reviewed it right before this, but yeah. So you can see we're starting to butter out. So it's down 16 basis points, or 0.16%. That's a pretty big swing. I mean, we don't really see that any other time in a 2-3 week period. That's a big swing. Things moving in the right direction. All right, let's hear what. And for those of you who may not know, Jerome Powell is the chairman of the Federal Reserve. So there's a board of bankers for the bank that loans money to all the other banks and to our government. And so it has a large sway in monetary policy, which affects everything, most of which debt related assets, markets. So that would be real estate. So he's actually addressing what I was talking about earlier about supply and demand curve of monetary policy. It's interesting he uses that example as well of vehicles, because one of the things that the market has started to see in consumer debt is there's a lot of bad debt in automobiles, because just like everything spiked during COVID, as we started to see then demand normalize, but then supply still remaining high, it absolutely crushed the value of resale vehicles, because there's the most they have to compete with new cars, which have similar to new homes versus resale homes. I got the hiccups. Um, Similar to new homes versus resale homes, the best deals in terms of rate incentives and that sort of thing are on the new ones. And so when you're in a very constrained supply environment like we have been, what you see is the cost of resale varies really rapidly. So it'll go up really quickly. And then when you see that demand begin to butter out or to taper off, it'll also then drop really quickly. And so in the case of automobiles, what we saw was it absolutely crushed the value of resale cars. And so now there's all these car notes where people are making payments on something or for a purchase that is now worth substantially less than what they owe. And so it's hard to incentivize people to keep making payments on that. And so we're seeing some effects from that in automobile debt. I'm going to skip ahead to this last one where they're talking about rate policy. 5130. I guess this is Kevin talking. Okay, let's actually see what we're looking at. So, also I should know this. Who is the next Fed chair? Kevin Warsh. Okay. I can't get to the Fed without going through Congress. Approach to rates. What about? I thought he was confirmed. Oh, it's ongoing. CNBC. Kevin Warsh signals approach to rates. What a leadership change means for consumers. Let's see. Made a case for becoming. Let's see. Spoke to senators. Approach rate. Fed has an interest rate tool and a balance sheet tool. Interest rate tool gets in the cracks. It's fairer. This is gonna. Why are they making this like third grade level? That's my job, is to read and interpret. Where April Fed meeting. Serious concerns about inflation. Yeah, rapidly dropping rates would be. I get it. Don't hate me for this. So many people want to see the rates begin to drop in real estate, and I don't blame you. I like honestly, selfishly, I would love to see rates come down. Do you know how like I would make so much money? I genuinely don't think it's in anybody's interest, least of which your interest, to see rates come down rapidly, because if we see mortgage rates start to just drop all of a sudden, we're going to see the same stuff that we saw through here, right? Median sales price rocketing up between 2020 through 2022. And that's not good for anybody. Especially like I mean, look at this. The median price in June of 2022, peak of everything, right? People now, because I've seen some people that have come to me in order to sell their home, right? And when I do their consult, look at it, I'm like, I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but your buyer agent, or if they were working directly with a builder, the sales agent that told him, real estate only goes up. Guess what? It doesn't always, especially if you overpay at the peak of the market. Like if there's a peak and then you overpay on top of that, it does not end well. And there were a lot of people that did, unfortunately. So anywho, uh, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, because we'll see what this actually does in terms of mortgage rates. The I was going to pull up Polymarket. Fed rate cut. Interesting. Okay, April 28th. Likely no change through the summer. Maybe a 25 bips cut. So Polymarket is where people essentially bet on what they think is going to happen. And traditionally, it's pretty accurate. So it's looking like we're probably going to see rates kind of stabilize where they're at for now. And they have these for literally everything. Sometimes it's really accurate, like things like this where it's market rates and that sort of thing, where it's like a large pool of people that determine the outcome, tends to be pretty accurate. When it comes to other things, not so much, because it is where people just guess about the future, right? So, yeah. So overall, we're seeing a lot of optimism in the market right now, and then we're also seeing, especially in terms of overall inventory. Let's look at months of supply. And this is at a market level. So we've seen an increase in supply from 2022, which was, peak of the market, right? zero point 0.9 to now we're at 3.2, 3.3, 3.4. Historically, a balanced market is 6 months of supply. And so when we break this out in terms of, like, let's look at just single family. Okay, 2.7, 2.8. You look at condos, 4.9. Condos are almost a balanced market right now. You look at townhomes. Townhomes right now, still a seller's market, but more balanced. And we're seeing that and feeling that too, because if you look at specifically single family, still very firmly a seller's market, even though it feels much more sane because it's up from like zero point 0.5 months back in February of 2022, which is just obscene, unheard of. Absolutely unheard of. Let's see. Resale, single family, more than 1 acre. Let's see what we're looking at. 3.1. That's interesting. 3.1. Let's split this out. Yeah, you can see particularly more than 1 acre homes. And this just is representative of overall lifestyle change, right? People's priorities have just changed substantially since pre-COVID, and so you see that in the numbers with things like over an acre of land. It is like there's less inventory and it's going quicker than it did pre-COVID. So overall inventory is up from the peak of COVID. Here, let me reset this. So all acreage sizes, we'll do new and resale. Yeah. Overall, we're seeing a slight uptick in inventory. Pending. Also, that's crazy. Yeah, you can see how fast the market is being absorbed. So, and really, this is indicative of, right, you come back here, rates combined with, so rates coming down, especially rapidly. Let's look at the 3 year, 5 year. Okay, so you can see where rates were super uber low, 2.19 versus 2.88. And then this is, I believe this is the first time. Let's look. So we'll go back to last year around this time. It was 6.62, 5.82, which honestly prices a lot of people out of the market. And so around this time frame, 6.8. So it's about a half a point lower than it was last year. We go back to the same time frame, 2024, where 3/4 of a point down. Like that's a huge difference. That's a huge difference. Like let's go to, this is from Mike, one of the lenders that many of our clients use. Let's just use his calculator. So a typical mid-range single family purchase, we'll say, is 450. And we'll say somebody's putting down 5% on a conventional. So if we're doing this is way higher than it would be. But so annual insurance, we'll say 0. 0.4. We'll say annual taxes. We'll say it's somewhere in the county. We'll say it's mid-range. No HOA. Okay. 450 with 5% down would be on a 7.1 rate. Would be $3,400 a month, $3,420 versus a 6.3 would be $3,193. That's a big difference, and it's also a big difference in terms of purchasing power. And again, depending on the incentives and the situation, it might be, it wouldn't be quite that bad. Maybe it's 6% versus 5% with rate incentives on new construction or something like that. But that still is a huge difference of like $200, $300, $400 difference. Getting spam texts. Oh, cool. One of my clients' listings getting an offer. Very cool. So inventory is up, but it still feels thin. Buyers are being a little bit less picky, and there's a lot of buying activity right now that we're seeing in the market. You can see here, like jumping from 2886 up. To put this in perspective, we haven't seen this much activity since April of 2020 in terms of a jump in 1 month. That's insane. Maybe end of 2022, but that was because rates were starting to go up and so people panic bought. So in terms of in terms of looking at this in terms of stable market conditions, we haven't had this happen since 2020. Like that is a wicked shift in the market that we just haven't seen. It hasn't existed. So, let's see. Yeah, so in terms of, let's look at actual hot markets, hot and cold markets. I found this real interesting data visualization that I'm going to try to also, I'm going to reach out to one of my buddies and see if we are able to maybe make our own version of this. Why is it not loading? Goodness. Okay, we're going to look at this by zip code. Go to North Carolina. Let's look at new listings, days on market. Days on market is a pretty good proxy to see how things are. Let's see. let's select right here. Yeah, that looks about right. Okay. This is the Charlotte metro area. And what we're looking at is days on market. So if it all looks like very similar colors, it's because it is. And you're going to notice all the days on market for March of 2026 is like 57, 42, 43, 52, anything in the center of the city, 40, 51, 36, 36, 33. So we've seen largely really hot activity in the center of the city. But what's interesting is if we go back to February versus March, some of these are insane. So like this one here, 28107, which I believe is Midland. I'll pull it up here in a second. But 120 days on market median, right? February. You go to March, it goes from 120 to 61. 61. That's insane. Because it's just being absorbed so quickly. And so we're seeing these massive shifts in the overall market. Again, if we go back over to the statistical analysis model, months of supply, but days on market overall, we saw a pretty big drop, 46 down to 34 between February going into March. We won't see April numbers for a little over a week. But we didn't see a 50% decrease. So Midland is one of those areas that is stupidly hot right now. Let's see, where are some of the other dark areas? Or let me double check, I guess. Where's my map? Because this was 28107. 28107. Yep, so Midland and really just east of Charlotte, which might look kind of far if you're not familiar with the city. It's really not that far. You're 30, 40 minutes into the city, depending on where you're at, because it's not quite as far out as Stanfield. And there's stuff around there. There's shopping. You're not really in the middle of nowhere. Like it's it's less developed than being inside the 485 loop, but you're not in the middle of nowhere. For 28036, that went from 103 days on market to 60. 28036, also heating up. So that's going to be Davidson. Yeah, I believe that. I've gotten so many inquiries. My Davidson video started blowing up recently. A lot of people on that. Davidson's very hot right now. And Davidson adjacent, like Cornelius area too, just from what I've seen in terms of client activity. Let's see what else. I need to find a way to export this so I can see what the ratios are and then. How do I see only summary? 72 marks. Let's see. Actually, I might have figured it out. And then we do it again here. Download data. summary, download. I might have to copy paste this in. Let's see. And then 69. See, how do I convert this into a table? Data. We'll just do this the old-fashioned way. I used to be a bit of an Excel monkey myself when I used to work in corporate. So we'll say, so it's month, so month over month change. Actually, technically, that's not correct. It'd be final minus initial over initial. So this should be final. Let's see. Minus initial, because that'll give us the true. There you go. So minus 76%. That's crazy. $69. Is that correct? So 69. No, 43 minus 69 would be 26. Negative 26 divided by I got H2 in there. There we go. I was like, this should be like minus 30, not minus 70. Okay, we're going to then drag that out all the way down. This is what I do in my free time, just for y'all to get some fun and useful market insights. So we have here, now I need to also add a slicer. Oh no, actually, Control Z. I don't want a slicer, I want a filter. Why am I, let's see. Remove filter. Data. There we go. Okay. And then we're going to sort this. Oh, so that would be our coldest. Interesting. And then we're going to sort Z to A for our Wait, what? I need to think this through because I feel so. This would be because, yeah, I think these are just reversed. So I think this is March. Yeah. So this is days on market February. There we go. That hurt my brain to look at. My bad. Okay, so let's start with these right here are going to be hottest zip codes today. And then these will be coldest zip codes. We'll get to that here in a little bit. And so for our five hottest, let's see, 28098 is Lowell. That's interesting. I wouldn't have pegged Lowell, but that makes a lot of sense actually. There's been a lot of new construction activity over there, and I'm guessing also some of the new construction. Actually, this would be an interesting thing to do too if we well, I guess we can't really segment that out without doing this differently. But that'd be interesting to see because we could see the with and without new construction. Because I guarantee you there's some of this is the new construction communities that are just blowing out inventory because they need to. All right. So Lowell's number one. Um, Number two, 28174, Wingate, also large new construction development area. It's interesting these are also like the secondary markets. Because that what that tells me is a lot of these aspirational buyers, so people that are buying first home or maybe next home that's like forever home. This is more mid-market stuff. Uh, is where a lot of the activity is. So Wingate's going to be number two. Third hottest, 28204, is that's super interesting. So Cherry, Elizabeth. I don't have anything to prove it, but what I suspect that we're seeing here is with the light rail expansion project getting confirmed, I think it's a very real possibility that that you're seeing part of this is all the activity for where that expansion line is going to go, along here, along Chantilly and Commonwealth. But also there's a lot of condos through here as well, this near southeast side. Um, so that's like not technically Dilworth, but it borders it. So Cherry, Commonwealth, Elizabeth. What would this be? I guess it would be Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, Commonwealth, Cherry. Really, it's just Elizabeth and Cherry, not technically Commonwealth. But that would explain part of that, especially because again, a lot of the condos were just sitting, not moving for a while, and then they've started to really blow up all at once. 28088 also secondary market, says Landis. I've really liked Landis. I've been talking about Landis and China Grove now for several years because I used to live in Kannapolis, just not even 5 minutes from there, and it's a really nice area. It's an area nobody knows about. It's come up a ton. There's some new construction developments and things over that way that have been popping up, and there's just really good value, like in terms of what you're spending, what you're getting. 28209. And this is going to be Sedgefield, Madison Park, not technically Myers Park. Sedgefield, Freedom Park, Madison Park. I'll put in here parentheses Charlotte for these as well. Yeah, so 3 secondary markets and then 2 areas inside of Charlotte. Now going to the absolute we can pull, actually let's pull some market data for each of these. 28098. I'm going to pull this off to the other window so I can try to multitask. 28174. There's no point in looking at because so you want to do rolling data on a relatively short time frame when you're looking at really small areas like this, because otherwise the data is too choppy. It's completely useless. 28204. 28088. Oh, it'll only let me do 4? Sad. Okay, I'll have to do the last one last, I guess. So we're seeing up here days on market 28098 was low. So this was 25, 37, 21, 40. Median price. $287.5, 349,900, 752,500. Uh, 279,950, and then we'll figure out the last one last. And then inventory, months of supply. This is 2.9, 5.1, 4.0, 4.4. And then let's also look at percent of original price, because that'll be an interesting one too, just to see how this is looking. Okay. 96.5. 0.954, 0.973, 0.956. Okay. And then we're going to get rid of one of these. And then we'll add in the last one, which was Sedgefield, 28209. 28209. Which is 0.983. And then I got to just pull real quick my other data. So days on market, which was, and again, we're looking at 12 months rolling. 28209, 11. Median price 705. And inventory 2.5. Cool. All right, so we'll bring this back over here. This is what we're looking at for the hottest markets. So percent of original is the percent of the last listed price when something went under contract. So it gives us just kind of an idea of how much negotiability there is at the time of contracting, because we can look at how long something's been sitting on market and basically use that as a proxy to figure out whether or not it's appropriately priced, maybe or maybe not appropriately priced. And also how much we would want to come in under the asking price as kind of a, I won't say minimum, but on an average property, what the minimum would be, because it gives us a pretty good idea of where we stand in the middle of everything. Now, coming over here, let's look at the coldest zip code. Oh, to finish explaining inventory, again, we kind of talked about that earlier. How many months would it take for something to get absorbed? In the market, median price, kind of like the average, is just half of homes are listed more expensive, half of homes are listed cheaper, and then days on market. Self-explanatory. So let's do same thing up here, except the data and everything's going to be all different. Okay. All right, so for the town neighborhood, the coldest of the cold, 28124. Mount Pleasant. I believe that too, because I've seen some crazy deals, like really good deals out that way. Mount Pleasant. 28033. Kraus and Cherville. That would explain why it's so cold. Couldn't even tell you where Kraus is. 28032. That's interesting that Kramer didn't, because if you remember, Lowell is one of the hottest, and Lowell is right next door. Um, that might also have to do with some of the new construction activity in the area too. That's really interesting, actually. That's really interesting. 28163. Stanfield. You'll notice, actually, this is so interesting because you'll see this is just kind of a shift, really, on most of these. Because Midland is one of the hottest, Stanfield now one of the coldest. That's super interesting. This is why I love looking at the data, because you discover things you wouldn't have seen any other way. And then, oh my goodness, look at this. One of the coldest, Monroe, South Monroe. One of the hottest, Wingate. That's actually insane. Okay. So then we're gonna pull real quick for we'll pull the data and then probably about call this for today. And because Penny's grumbling at me for not giving her more attention. Gotta love on my puppy. 28124. 28033. 28032. And then 163. Okay, days on market. 24, 21, 40, 28. Median price is 359, 752.5, 279, 950, 390. This is so interesting because it seems like the hottest and coldest markets primarily have to do with just shifts in buyer sentiment at the same price points. That's actually so interesting. Inventory and months of supply, 4, 4, 4.4, 4.6. And then percent of original is going to be 97.2, 97.3, 95.6, and 96.7. Sounds like a radio station. 96.7. WDOM. Days on market. Oh, lordy. Okay. And then the last one, the Monroe South half, which is 28112. Going to be our last one. That's going to be 97.3. Inventory is going to be 3.8. Median price is going to be 399 250. And then days on market's going to be 32. And then we'll just call this And I'm also going to then share this with the team. Very cool. Well, we got some real interesting insights today. Um, to answer a few final questions, we are seeing shifts in the primary demand from two different market segments, which is what I reported out on the last live stream that was market related. And so the biggest shift is between the like low threes up to the low fours, still very hot, but consumer sentiment is shifting rapidly, primarily just in terms of areas that are preferred. And some of that has to do with new construction communities that are coming online, which we can talk more about another day. And then the other thing is that we're seeing, or the other segment that we're seeing is that mid sevens up to mid eights range, or maybe high sixes up to the mid sixes range, or excuse me, high sixes up to the mid eights range, is also seeing a shift in just where people are looking, and they're looking away from some of these uh, more affluent areas that are out in the middle of nowhere, and they're looking more for location, which I can tell you based on just conversations I'm having with my own clients, that is definitely something that we've talked about. And overall, just the market is starting to heat up rapidly at a degree that we have not seen since the very beginning of COVID, when rates were really low and there was a lot of fear in the market that was driving consumers to try to buy as fast as possible. And now it's a very different situation. It's more just like we're seeing rates come down to a level they haven't been at a long time, particularly during the summer buying season. And so everybody's starting to really feel that right now. So if you're buying, the expectation is make sure that you're writing enough offers to be able to get a good deal. Don't overpay, even though the market's starting to heat up. And if you're selling, make sure that you are working with somebody that's going to be able to maximize exposure for your property, because particularly right now, we're almost like, if you plan to sell this year, you got to sell ASAP. Do not delay. Um, Getting it listed by the end of April or beginning of May. Honestly, May is generally too late. I'll be real. We've gotten some phenomenal results for clients before listing in May. That is not average. That's not typical. It's also not easy. And when I say it's not easy, it's not that I care so much because it's extra work. It's because I have to roll the dice in order to, like, we'll give it all we got, but at a certain point, supply and demand, the market itself is always bigger and stronger than you are. And so you want to be on the market yesterday. Like, you want to be on the market as soon as possible, if not already on the market, if you're going to try to maximize your sale value for this year. And if you're not sure whether or not that's possible or where you might fall, reach out and we'll talk through it and figure out what the situation for your particular property is or could be. My name's Lucas Roller. I'm your expert. Call, text, ask questions, scan the code, book a call with me. Or if you're trying to figure out where to live, you can also take the quiz. It takes all my experience from doing 350 some different one-on-one consults with people that are packing up and moving to the Charlotte MSA. Takes about 30 seconds, and it'll give you a customized idea of some of the best areas in terms of things that fit your lifestyle and priorities. Thanks for tuning in. If you got questions, drop them below. Always happy to answer, or text/scan the code. My name's Lucas Roller, your favorite realtor here in the beautiful Queen City, and I'll catch you next time.